Hello, folks. We're live. Happy Tuesday. It's a great event today. State of the Chicago Senior Housing. We did a senior housing event in Minnesota. I don't envy you all. I mean, I think COVID has really hit your industry harder than most, and the industrial guys are sitting back and laughing because they're busier than ever, and y'all are working your butts off just to kind of keep things going. So I appreciate that. Let me just do a quick screen share here so you can show you who we are. We're REjournals, happy to be part of the Chicago market for, like 35 years. This is a virtual event from 9 to 11 a.m. You can just stay here in this Zoom call. You don't have to go back to our lobby, but if you do still have the lobby up, it's got everybody's picture on there, where they work, and you can see the agenda. That's a pretty cool place to kind of keep both of those up. Let's see, I will be recording this. We'll put it on YouTube today. Probably by tomorrow. I'm a day behind. This is us, REjournals. There's more of us than there used to be. Red News and as our counterpart in Texas, Minnesota Real Estate Journal. And then the Midwest Real Estate News covers 17 different states. We'll do 200 events this year, 200 events next year. We've pivoted to virtual. It's been a boiler of work, but here we are, Chicagoland Senior Housing Real Estate Market. These are your speakers. Your moderator is Suzanne. I'm going to flash these back up as they're talking so you can take down their contact info and remember who they are. But Suzanne, I'm turning it over to you. I'll disappear, but I'm here if you need me. So just holler, hey, Todd. I'll still be here. Okay, off to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm looking at beautiful sunshine in my office with all these windows. It's kind of nice not having to be in a room without windows, right? So anyway, I wanted to say hello, and we are talking today on senior housing, and we have a illustrious panel. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Suzanne Koenig from SAK Management Services, and we do senior housing turnaround. We get involved in assessing properties, skilled nursing, assisted living, independent living, all different types, behavioral health. And we also go in and do assessments for lenders, for stakeholders, landlords, banks, all different types of people. We also operate as third-party managers. We manage several properties all over the country. Right now, Texas, New Mexico, Ohio, Illinois, and then we've kind of managed in most states. We also, I serve as a patient care ombudsman in the court-appointed bankruptcy code, BAP-CIPA. I'm also a receiver often and a Chapter 11 trustee. So I get court-appointed by the Department of Justice to do these types of jobs, as well as an examiner during bankruptcy proceedings. So we have a full spectrum, and we are super busy because obviously during this period of time, it's a little crazy for everyone, and there's COVID all out there. There's a surge. We're going to be talking today a lot about what's going on, how senior housing is going into the future. And let's start by introducing our panel. I'm going to let everyone introduce themselves. So Dora, why don't you take it away and begin?
Great. Thanks for having me on your panel today. My name is Dora K. I am a vice president at Mosley Architects. I'm also the senior living sector leader. And I've been in senior living for about 22 years and enjoyed every minute of it. There's been a lot of learning environment over the years as the industry's really grown and evolved, and have enjoyed being a part of that change that's occurred over the years. Mosley last year celebrated their 50th anniversary, but we also celebrated our 30th anniversary being in the senior living arena. So, I mean, the past 30 years, we've really fostered some long-term relationships, and as the organization has grown and evolved, and it's been amazing being part of that, forging new paths and just being a part of the industry growth. It's really about engaging environments, incorporating up and coming technologies, and bringing sustainability and resilience into our designs. I really believe we want to get this year behind us, apply what we've learned, and work for a better industry for care for our aging population, including me. I'm the back of the baby boomers, but it's coming. So appreciate being on the panel today.
Great. How about Michael?
Good morning, Zoomland. Thank you, Suzanne, for moderating. So good morning, everyone. My name is Michael Hayford. I am with Kessel Systems. I am responsible for the multifamily mixed use portfolio here for the Midwest region. And if you're unfamiliar with Kessel Systems, we are the leader in managed security services. If you're unfamiliar with what that means, we are a managed solution similar to a SaaS model where we do provide security-based technologies around access control, keyless access control fob systems, as well as high definition IP cloud-based camera surveillance and camera monitoring or remote guarding services, which we will get into later today, and how that represents itself into the senior living environment.
Thank you.
Super excited to be on the call and look forward to some great content.
Thank you, Michael. How about Ben?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Ben Seeger with KTGY Architects. We're a full-service architecture and planning firm with a national footprint. We have 6 offices across the country, and we really specialize in all things residential. So anywhere from a single-family home to a high-rise, especially residential, such as student housing and, of course, senior housing, which is why I'm here today. My personal role, I'm the national practice leader for our service-enriched senior housing group, which includes, in our definition, independent living, assisted living, and memory care. So if we're working on a project with any of those 3 uses, it'll come across my desk regardless of where it is in the country. I used to travel a little bit more. Last year I was here in person, and now I'm here in my house. So it's a little different. I much enjoy seeing everyone's faces, but for now I'll deal with seeing your 5 faces who's on the panel with me. So looking forward to it.
Thank you, Ben. And last but not least, Kevin.
Good morning. This is Kevin Benema. I'm really glad that I had a chance to participate on this call. I'm the founder and CEO of Charter Senior Living. We're a boutique operating company that's based out of the Chicagoland area. We've been in business now for almost 4.5 years. And we currently focus on the Midwest, Southeast, and then Mid-Atlantic, what I'll call operational geography. We're very entrepreneurial, and we are now venturing into more of a development role. But a company that's fully focused on employee morale, just doing the right thing, and just offering something different to employees that are looking for something outside of what I'll call a corporate structure. And certainly in these times, culture has been a real powerful way companies have been getting through these very difficult times. So again, appreciate being on the call, and just excited to be on this panel as well.
Thank you. Well, we have a great panel here. And so I'm going to ask everyone, we're going to go around and we're going to talk and have some questions. And then I'm going to leave some time toward the end of the presentation to take questions if people want to give us some questions from the audience. So let's start maybe with Dora. And Dora, I have some questions that I want to ask, and with your architectural background, COVID, we're of course going to talk about COVID here, many things. COVID has magnified the impact on the financial future of the aging resident. How is the industry prepared to satisfy this need going forward, now and going forward?
Well, what's been interesting, over the past couple of years, Argentum really has kind of put their thumb on the pulse of an issue that's already existing, which is how to solve the middle market.
So Dora, I don't mean to interrupt, but I don't know that a lot of people know who Argentum is. So can you define, some of the people here are not necessarily.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Argentum's basically, it used to be called Alpha, so the Assisted Living Federation. It was started, I want to say back in 1991, I'm guessing. Anyway, 30 years ago. It was started, and it's just really starting because codes back then really did not address seniors and aging seniors. It was more either residential or institutional. So back then they kind of started this group, and it is now called Argentum, and it just kind of, it's every year it talks about, new technologies, about, the healthcare portion of it. It talks about building components. It's very diverse, and it really is a good organization that really tries to track the pulse of the community and how to address upcoming issues.
And like a provider association, right? For
Right.
the most part. And
Yep.
many advertisers or people that provide services to senior housing are part of that. Okay.
Exactly. Yep. So, back a couple of years ago, I want to say they started really discussing the middle market issues that are upon us. We have affordable housing for the lower income, and then obviously a lot of the facilities that we provide are on the higher end, and there is a sweet spot in that middle that the markets really haven't addressed yet. And even life care communities, usually they're faith-based or not-for-profit CCRC products. You have to buy in instead of being a rental model. And I think the biggest concern with COVID right now is that independent living is seemingly kind of out of reach. Independent living itself is a choice-based change, whereas, assisted living, memory care is more geared towards, the higher acuity. It's a need-based move. And kind of what I've been seeing, because we have a couple projects actually in Chicago area, that one opened up right before COVID, one opened up during, and I have one here in Virginia opening up after. And the need hasn't changed. There's been a little bit of hiccup, I think, with having the moves happen, but I think things are realigning, and that need's still there. So kind of thinking outside the box, really how we take care of our aging population, but you need to figure out how also to temper the economic turn down. I've been seeing increased projects that are going towards tax credits, adaptive housing for seniors, converting or adaptive reuse projects. There's one that's up in Massachusetts that's looking to convert a Catholic school into senior housing, the independent living side. And they actually have a community that's not too far away that could provide the services that independent living needs. But the other big thing I'm seeing recently, which is not something new, but it seems to be more at the forefront right now, is conversions of hotels. We have a lot of hotels that are starting to have issues, but instead of just letting them fall to the wayside, really repurposing those buildings and trying to find a market niche that kind of helps this middle component that's going to be struggling here.
Isn't that expensive though? Converting those, because they're not built to the standards, I would suppose, that senior housing specifically, especially assisted living, that may have regulatory, independent, depending. But isn't that expensive to retrofit that as opposed to building new?
It depends on the project you're looking at. Obviously, there's some buildings that are kind of geared towards it. If they already have like kitchenettes or they already have CMU walls between units, those are already starting to go the direction that's needed for the rating between units or sleeping units. A lot of these buildings, especially more the high rise, already have the NFPA 13 system in place. It's probably geared more towards a senior living independent conversion than it is towards memory care, because you start getting into a lot more of the regulations. And I know, in Chicago, they're pretty stringent on the review of the projects and making sure it's compliant, because it's not just building codes. We also have NFPA in Chicago that we, or in Illinois in general, that we deal with. So it's just, it's a by project basis, and in the past, we've looked at them, and a lot of times it has not penciled out. But if we're looking really for someone to champion this middle market and trying to make this affordable, even if it's for the not quite the need-based assisted living memory care, we're really working towards helping the independent living resident that wants to size down. Those type of projects make sense, and they are they're more available than they were, whether it's, the hotels, maybe it's a shopping center. There's a lot of ingenuity out there right now, and it's promising.
The other thing that I would add about hotels that you're speaking about, Dora, is they have, the first floor, you go in on a hotel, they have administrative offices, they have commercial kitchen, they have lounges, they have seating areas. So a lot of the things that we're going to inherently design into senior housing are going to be there in a hotel. Yeah, there's some code related issues to work out. Yeah, maybe the rooms are just a little bit smaller than you like for a, assisted living studio. There's some challenges there, but in terms of having most of the uses and infrastructure there that you need, it's a great use. It's easier than a lot of other uses that we're looking at. We've repositioned a medical office building and that didn't have any of that. So we had to add all of it in addition to creating all the rooms and everything. So I think I think you're onto something. Hotels seem like they'd be a great option for this.
So
Yeah.
Ben, I'm sorry, are you finished, Dora?
I was just going to mention that hotels also, the trending is this hospitality feel. So that's definitely a hospitality feel when you walk into the first floor of a hotel.
It's as hospitality as you get.
Yeah, so Ben, as you're speaking about that, so tell me though, COVID, again, has obviously impacted real estate, has impacted businesses, has impacted everyone, including the design for senior housing. And what are the major trends that you're seeing now, and what trends are going to be long lasting? Because as we operate in facilities, we have had to just go along and like immediately every time CDC and CMS change their guidelines, we have to go put things up, take things down, move things around. So what are you seeing just from now? I'm sure that you're looking at this totally differently. It would be interesting to hear from your perspective.
Yeah, we are. We are looking at it differently. And we've had a lot of kind of focus groups / brainstorming sessions with different developers and operators that we work with, and just tried to think, okay, how are we going to change the way we design because of COVID? And how many of these changes are going to be long lasting and long term? And I'm sure any architect or operator in the room has had similar discussions. And we work with, like I'm sure Dora does, with a lot of different operators. So we got a lot of different perspectives from different regions of the country and different businesses. So we were kind of able to formulate our thoughts on where we think it's going to go. And just for my own, organizing it in my own mind, I like to put these types of changes into 4 different buckets or 4 different categories. And I'll explain in a second, but the 4 categories would be major space planning issues, building systems, finishes, and then kind of a 4th catch-all category, which is what I saw as existing trends within the senior housing market that are really being accelerated because of this. So the first one, like the big space planning issues, those are things that most of the developers that we talk to, they're pretty hesitant to go towards because of cost issues. So those would be things like, neighborhood concept for the assisted living. We've even talked to people about having like a separate room or a couple of rooms set aside as hotel rooms for staff that can stay there if they don't want to expose their family or they don't want to expose the residents. I mean, those have some serious financial implications, but there's other things such as, visitation rooms with direct access from the outside. So when you're coming to visit a loved one, you don't have to go through the community, or even in nicer climates, having visitation spaces outdoors. So those are kind of the first bucket. The second would be building systems. So I think that's pretty self-explanatory. It's UV lighting, it's higher efficiency HVAC systems with, more air turnover, better air filtration. Third would be finishes. So those would be things like antimicrobial surfaces, acrylic fabrics on the furniture, probably things that we should have been doing anyway. And a lot of times we are doing them anyway, but certain communities, for whatever reason, it just wasn't in the budget and we didn't do those types of things. We're also trying to limit high touch areas. So touchless faucets, light switches, all those types of things. So those are kind of some of the things that we're seeing and some of the things we're brainstorming. Again, a lot of it's common sense. In terms of what's going to be long lasting, and I'd be curious to hear Dora and everyone else's thoughts on this, but my own thought in terms of what's going to be long lasting, I think Some of those easy, low-hanging fruit type of changes, like the antimicrobial surfaces, the touchless faucets, the touchless lights, all those types of things, I think they're absolutely here to stay. In terms of some of the bigger space planning issues, I really think that as we get through this, and we had good news on a vaccine yesterday, I think that those are gonna, I don't think they're gonna be long lasting. I think they just have financial implications. We've come a long, long way as an industry just the last 5 or 10 years in terms of design. And I think we wanna continue kind of that hospitality resort feel as much as we can, and not, not take a step backwards because of this pandemic. So that might be controversial.
Right.
I don't know. I'm curious what my fellow panelists think is here to stay.
So, but what do you think financially? Is it going to cost like a lot more money now to build? Like what do developers and what do operators, what extra do they have to put into their budgets?
I don't think it's much if we go with the types of changes I think are going to be long lasting, which is just some of those, building systems and finishes type of changes. If we stick with those, yeah, there's going to be a little bit of incremental cost, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not much. If we start building everything with a neighborhood concept, so you can quarantine, those 12 residences in case of an outbreak, then all of a sudden, not only is it more construction costs, but the operation costs gets higher because the staffing isn't as efficient. And that's part of why I think some of these changes won't be long lasting that we're talking about, just because financially it might not work.
Yeah, see, from an operator's point of view, we're having to quarantine certain areas of nursing homes and do COVID units and do things like that. So just wondering if you guys thought about, having something different so that people can quarantine and really what's going to happen, with the cure. I hope we have a cure and we're never going to have to go through this again. But, I don't know if people are even thinking about that kind of stuff now.
The one, this is Kevin Benema. Ben, I agree with everything you just said. And I would also add that given the isolation quarantine protocols that have, I think really done a lot of, or contributed to a lot of concerns from a mental health standpoint, given the prolonged nature of this and having residents cooped up in smaller units. We have paid particular attention to making units a little larger, more lighting, more what I'll call maybe balconies, more kind of patio access on the first floor, or outdoor areas where you can socially distance appropriately. I mean, being cooped up in a 275 to a 400 square foot unit for up to 14 days, that's a lot. And it, all of us would have a hard time doing that. So we're trying to pay a little more attention to, kind of sizes to units. And a lot of communities do have good size units, and we found that it's just a little easier to adjust. But the outside access or more natural light, we know that plays well on people's psyche and mood.
So, I'm sorry, go on, Dora.
I was just gonna say, to kind of tack on to that, some positive impacts that's, I think, is coming out of this. We have flu every year, and I know it doesn't really get in the news, but there are flu outbreaks in facilities, and just that higher, because of what's happened this past year, really just identifying, maybe we should do a little bit more. And a lot what we do, Mosley has COVID, or building task force as well. We have not only just senior living, but we have higher ed, K-12, civic justice. So all of these kind of reviewed, what are the most important things for each, and what's different between our facilities and, like a K-12, we're 24/7. It's not like we have a downtime. It has to be running all the time. And just being able to embrace some of these different design items that can easily be operational as much as it is physical changes.
Okay. So Michael, tell us, how is technology influencing today's senior housing operations? What are some of the things that you're seeing from the technological standard?
Thanks, Susan. That's a great question. So, whenever you look at safety and security, there's that old saying that, the best offense is a strong defense. And as a Chicago Bears fan, sometimes the only offense is the defense. So that really plays well into safety and security. So it's interesting to hear from an operations and a design standpoint. A lot of the technologies that we're putting into buildings today solve an immediate need, but are also there for the long haul. Let's remember that today we're dealing with coronavirus 19, right? It was just a few short years ago that we were dealing with mad cow disease. We were dealing with swine flu. We were dealing with bird flu. So from a safety standpoint, regardless of the property, but most importantly in senior facilities and health care facilities where people with immune system deficiencies are much more affected by these flu symptoms, these flu pandemics, it's important to put good practice in place for the long haul, so that we're not so nearsighted that in 5 years when the next flu comes in, we're going, great, how do we solve this problem and how do we redesign the building? So technology plays a huge role in this, and it's things that we've been doing for years now in other properties. I'm a story guy, so I'll give you a quick story. I have a senior center here on the west side, and I walk in and talk technology, and all of a sudden it goes, wait a minute, seniors, technology, those two words don't mix, right? There's a fear of technology. What we're starting to see over the past couple of years is a higher adoption rate for technology amongst the senior population. My parents are in their mid 70s. They have iPads, cell phones. My dad, I can't call him on the phone anymore. It now has to be a FaceTime video call or some sort of chat function, text messaging. He's all about it, right? And this guy was a plumber for 47 years. So it just goes to show you that technology is not just accepted, it's wanted in these facilities. So the best defense or the best offense is a strong defense. What we're seeing today, and I think Ben talked about this with the non-touch faucets and non-touch lighting, is we're starting to see this in community doors, community areas where from an access control standpoint, we're seeing automatic door openers and touchless doors, technologies that, as our residents are walking through the property with their smart device, their smartphone, technology recognizes, hey, this is Mike Hayford, and he has access to this community room, this fitness center. So I'm going to automatically unlock the door, and I'm going to open it for him so that he doesn't have to touch anything. So we're reducing the amount of touches. That greatly reduces the amount of transformation of transferring of that disease. What we're also seeing is something called contact tracing, where now through technologies, we can now see, hey, if Michael Hayford is a carrier, we can now pull reports in the system and say, what rooms has Michael Hayford been in? Was he in the fitness center? When was he? And who else was in the fitness center with him at that time? So we can now, get a hold of kind of that spread. The third thing is, how do we prevent that disease from coming into the building in the first place? So through technologies, we can put things such as thermal cameras and, attestations, where essentially as a visitor, it could be a DJ that comes in for, a party, right? It could be the bingo caller, right? As family members, friends, contractors come into the building, we are now able to do multiple types of screening, whether it's temperature screening to make sure that they're under 100.4, right? We do health attestations. So when you come in, you either fill out a piece of paper or through an app, right? You can now testify that you don't have any of these symptoms, and you're kind of checking the box to say, yes, I'm healthy, I can be here. So again, it's that strong defense is really what is helping to prevent this this disease from spreading.
So
and
Michael,
that can be here forever.
Yeah, anywhere I go, especially if I'm walking into a senior housing facility now, the first thing I look at is the sanitizer. Where are all the sanitizer stations? Yeah. Even if I'm in a gym, my hands are horrible. They're like bleeding. They're like so rough. but I'm crazy sanitizing. So are we going to see all of this sanitizer in all of these facilities? Because I know for our facilities, we operate like 30 facilities. I have bought so much sanitizer and left them in the hallways. And I figured out that we didn't have all these dispensers, because who would have had sanitizing dispensers in every hall, at every place? So is that like one of the most like popular things that you're going to see now?
I would tell you there's very little technology in a sanitizing dispenser, right? So the good thing about that is no one's afraid to use it, because it's really easy. You walk up and put your hand under it. You may have to push a button. No big deal. We've been pushing buttons for hundreds of years. So I think that sanitizer stations, they're here for the long haul. Again, as the Bens and the Doras are designing facilities, it's up to us as an industry to make sure that, again, we're seeing the forest through the trees. This is today's pandemic. There will be more. Sanitizer is cheap. It's readily available. And you know what? At the end of the day, if it just makes you feel better, it gives you peace of mind, it's a really inexpensive way of doing it.
Well, and not only that, we're going to have to clean residents. I see somebody made a comment on cell phones. We got to clean everything that they'll be carrying on a constant basis. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be stations all over, sprays and antiseptics and things like that.
Well, I would tell you this, and again, this goes back to technology and design, right? Every room in a senior facility or really any multifamily, arena, every room has a television, maybe a radio. Why don't they have a $20 phone sanitizer from Walmart? Right? So this is just that forward thinking of, when my father goes to plug in, his cell phone on the charger, he's going to put it in his UV light, cleaning box.
Right.
Right. And he's going to put on his CPAP mask and he's going to fall asleep. Right. So I think it's just, there's a lot of inexpensive things that cause a great, service to the community. Now, as Ben and Dora were talking about, what does that do to development costs? Absolutely. Construction costs, especially here in the city, construction costs are skyrocketed, and they have been very high for years, and there's no real long-term sight of that reducing by any great measure, right? So yes, putting in automatic door openers, that's all going to affect that overall development cost, but you only have to do it once.
Right. Okay. Well,
Suzanne,
let's go to Kevin. Yeah, I want to give Kevin a chance too, and then we can all comment. I think, Kevin, from an operating standpoint, I think what I would love to hear, because that's what I do too, is how are the senior living communities going to continue to enhance their clinical, their operational protocols to ensure employee and resident exposure and safety, and everything is as much as possible, safety awareness. What are you guys doing? I know what we're doing and we're all over it, but I want to hear what are you doing that you're going to enhance that?
Yeah, I think that I think what I've been very encouraged about is we have been sharing a lot of best practices between ourselves, other operators. Our COO, Jane Salerson, has been on a panel, a weekly discussion with about 11 other operators, just talking about best practices. I mean, we're all trying to help one another, help the industry. And the bottom line is that we're all here to take great care of our residents. I think that's, our number one focus. But I think, I would categorize it kind of initially as making sure that you are the education piece to your employees. You have to make sure your employees understand the importance of protocols, the importance of, their particular role and how they, lead their life. I mean, you can't tell somebody what to do outside of work, but you can educate them on the risks, because we all know that it's primarily the employees that are bringing in COVID, and it's not their fault. This is something we're all dealing with, but we just need to make sure we're always being smarter. We are very aware of our surroundings. You're wearing a mask appropriately. You're very careful about your contact, and listen, it's hard with family members. It's hard. You want to love on your loved ones, and it's not easy. But I think that additionally, it all starts with who owns the process of access control when an employee comes into your community. So, for instance, at our entrances, we have it's almost it almost feels like a bank teller now, because we have our plexiglass, we have all of our electronic thermometers, and then we now have some advanced technologies where we are doing we can track employee tracing, contact tracing. Employees not only need to answer a certain amount of questions, if they don't answer them correctly, they cannot clock into our time clock. And the other thing that we are integrating is that we have a thermal camera that is being installed into our Chronos system. So as employees go to clock in, if they're over 100.3 or whatever it is, they can't clock in. But if you're not, but again, there's 3 shifts. We are a 24/7 business. And what we have tried to understand is that we may be very good at access control at 7 a.m., at 3:30, but at the 10 to 11 hour shift, we believe that's where the easiest opportunity to get exposure. And so I think that's something that I would highly recommend, that everyone's evaluating what they're doing on that 3rd shift. And you have to have a champion who is overseeing all of those protocols. We are, of course, doing mandatory employee testing and resident testing. I mean, it's in some of our states, it's 7 days, every 7 days. That's a whole nother element of cost. We have found that our local or our insurance carrier will, as long as employees have the insurance coverage, we can put that through health insurance. And then also if employees just don't have insurance but qualify through Medicaid and other state programs, those costs are offset. And in some states, we're getting that testing done for free.
Multiple times, Kevin. In some of the hot spots, they're requiring at least twice a week. You're saying 7 days a week. These carriers and stuff are not paying for every single time. So, stimulus monies are being used. I know, for us. And, what's going to happen when stimulus goes away? That's the scary things. What are you going to do when the stimulus goes away? We're still going to have to do all these tests and do all these things, right?
When the stimulus goes away, and listen, there's no certainty we're going to get what we all know we need, or it's not going to come as fast as we want. Thank goodness we had a couple rounds of stimulus. Now there's, I think the 3rd round, we're now starting to apply for some expense reimbursements based on all the PPE that we've spent. And look, I think this is this time you need to be very involved with your ownership groups. You need to be very, and I will tell you this, we're going into our budget or finalizing our budget season, and there's been a tremendous COVID impact to our financial statements. And unfortunately, look, some of that cost has to be passed on. And we don't want to, cost ourselves out of the market, but there's some real expenses here that in order for us to stay viable, we got to critically evaluate how much we can pass along.
What about when your communities get COVID? I know we operate several communities, and like you said, employees bring it in, asymptomatic employees, asymptomatic family members now if there is visitation, although I think a lot of the states now with the surge, we were going into that, now we're coming out of that. But what is going to happen, when all of these people, when they get COVID and your staff go down, you have to bring in staff from all over. I mean, it's frustrating. And, the costs are just tremendous. So
I will tell you this, I mean, look, you and I, and certainly many others on the call are dealing with this, as we sit here today. I mean, we have 7 communities in the, greater Chicagoland area and, 3 or 4 more in the Midwest. And we've had recent outbreaks and, you need to educate your staff on not only what our protocols are, that they are safe, but they have to follow these protocols. And, a lot of it too is managing and calming down staff, because some staff are like, look, I'm not coming back to the community until it's COVID free. And then you can educate them on all the things we discussed, our testing protocols, our sanitation protocols, all of our clinic. If you follow these and, you test negative, you should be able to come to work. And, and the other thing that we are finding that it's becoming essential, and many operators are doing this, is, anybody who works with a COVID resident, we offer hero pay is what we call it. So an extra, whatever it is, it could be up to $5 an hour or even more, depending on the extent of the outbreak. Because as you said, the more staff, the more unrest that the staff have, that 14-day spread, like you said, you're relying on agency. And and look, we've been in markets where competitors have had bad outbreaks. We're all fighting for the same staff. So it's not uncommon that our senior team, as a matter of fact, 2 days ago, I was in a community, helping, just offering help, offering motivation, support. That's essential during this time. Leadership is really defined during tough times. And I think, look, we heard some good news yesterday about a potential vaccine. Again, I think that's probably 6 months away before we're, we're really ready to offer that. And, to our employees and residents. It's not just the residents, it's the employees that I'm as concerned about. So, I think, and the other thing too is, like you'd mentioned, the quarantine protocols. It is. We've changed up our activity programming. When we go on a quarantine of whatever it is, 10 to 14 days or longer, we've been intentional about making sure that our activity professionals, our programming professionals have a different approach to how they do activities, because most of it now is door to door. It's not group activities. And it's not just the job of the activities. It's our caregivers, our department heads. We are all being very creative how to really address the isolation issues. I mean, to go to, now you're in your room for 14 days. Now you're getting meal service in a styrofoam container. And a day ago, you were now back with your comrades and your fellow residents. That is a big, big deal. Listen, I'm still a firm believer that senior housing is the best option for seniors. They are safer. We have great protocols. We solve many isolation issues, and we also manage somebody's healthcare. So
I have a question, because there's a lot of lenders out there as well. And I think that what's happening in many of these facilities, when you have outbreaks, each facility that I know all over has had some sort of an outbreak. Census out there has really gone down. So I kind of want everybody to comment on this, because once you have COVID in a building, you can use if you're a skilled nursing facility, you can use your Medicare funds, and with all the stimulus and everything, that's great. But look what's happening all over. Census, the American Healthcare Association, has done some studies where census is going down now all over, because people don't want their loved ones in. I know, Kevin, you just said it's the best place to be, but they don't want their loved ones in senior housing right now. So are you all, especially from the architects, are you building smaller facilities? Are the number of beds going down? But what's really happening, we have more seniors going in, becoming the baby boomers, and we're going to have more seniors, out there. So what are we really looking at? More or less? Like what's going on with that? I mean, anybody, can answer, because we got a few minutes, and then I want to see if there's any questions from the audience. I know someone had sent something about carrying a cell phone, and I think we kind of talked about that.
Yeah.
But maybe if each person wants to give their closing remarks and comment on that, maybe
Yes.
Dora, or Dora, why don't you start and then we'll go around.
Okay. Yeah, as far as what we've been seeing programmatically, I mean, we have multiple operators, and I would say it depends on the operator specifically. We do see a little bit of increase of single units, whether it's one bedroom or studio, as opposed to doing a lot sharing. They're trying to figure out, get the performer to work with units dedicated to a single person and try and get rid of that share atmosphere that's not good for a COVID environment. I don't know about Ben, if he's seeing similar things. I'm not seeing the size of the buildings changing right now. Really just seeing maybe how they're looking at the programming and just incorporating a few of the simple things like a visitor entry area, as opposed to just coming in and just separating, the entrance for staff. So there is the separation, and heard a lot about like memory care staff coming in separate from AL, just trying to accommodate some of these simple things in the design when we're thinking it through.
Okay, Michael, any last words on that too?
Yeah, so I would say, we as access control, we focus on beds, right? How many, units or how many beds. We have not been seeing any reduction in size or certainly bed count. But yes, we are, instead of seeing kind of the common living or the shared living units, we are starting to see those to be single units, sometimes a little, smaller, certainly. But again, I think we can't design and provide services based on what we're experiencing today. We have to solve today's problem and not, cut off our nose to spite our face for tomorrow. You can only build a building one time. Ben and Dora can only design it one time, right? And then, the cost of rehabbing it is ridiculous. So, I think we're starting to see, although it's a pandemic, cooler heads are here. So, and as far as the cell phone thing, the question on carrying cell phones, I would tell you there was a day that my father had a wallet that was 3.5 inches thick. Today he uses Apple Pay, he uses digital cards. So I think, seniors are carrying their cell phones more often, simply because it's now their identity and their financial tool all in one device. And through pouches, women aren't carrying purses anymore. All of that can be covered, carried on your cell phone, in a pouch around your neck, in a bag.
Okay.
So we are starting to see it in our senior centers. Absolutely.
Ben, last comments?
Yeah, so I agree with Dora on the community size. We're not seeing communities smaller than they were in the past. I think there's just some economies of scale that you need to build to make it work from a financial standpoint. Maybe the programming is a little different. In terms of a couple little final thoughts, I do use the word community, not facility. To me, facility is the F word. Maybe that's because we come from a really residential point of view, our firm does. So, we design places for people to live. And yes, there's health care aspects. Yes, there's hospitality aspects. But to me and to us at its core, these are residences because people live there. So we're trying to design a comfortable residential living environment. So when we start talking about hand sanitizing stations everywhere, yeah, that's probably a good idea right now. And that's probably a good idea in the future because, whatever the next, virus that comes in might be more living on surfaces than airborne, who knows? But as designers, we need to really think about how we work those stations into the design so that you're not walking down the hallway and it doesn't look like a hospital with hand sanitizers everywhere.
Okay, Kevin.
So that's our challenge.
Last minute saying anything.
Yeah, I just look. I agree with everything everyone said. I'm an enormous optimist. We are the bell curve of senior living. We're still going darn near straight up. There's going to be plenty of demand for a long time to come. And I think that, look, we are seeing occupancies increase in our in our memory care community and communities, because, it's very difficult to keep a memory care resident at home while you're trying to manage your job online and then possibly even have children in the house. So we're seeing some reasonable increases in occupancy. Assisted living, and I think it was mentioned earlier, these are not people kicking the tires. These are people who need help. I mean, people still need our help. It just comes down to educating. I would say maybe on the independent living side, the sales cycle is a little longer, but still, there's still an opportunity to sell the benefits, of peace of mind, knowing there's care available, better socialization. So, big optimist. I mean, I saw a comment on the HVAC. Somebody brought up the HVAC systems,
Right.
and how, and certainly how the virus could be spreading airborne. I mean, we've been trying to figure that out, and I'm a believer that we still don't know all the ways the virus is spreading. And so we're critically looking at our HVAC systems and putting in various modifications so we're not filtering the same air throughout the whole community. It's an expense, but I can tell you, if you don't do that, the customer is going to be asking those questions,
Right.
and it could be a competitive disadvantage if you do not make those modifications. And it's just the right thing to do.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Just like airplanes, I think that's what we're all worried about. Well, I think this is going to conclude our program. I certainly appreciate everyone and our wonderful panel. And I think just from my perspective, I think we have to be thoughtful. We've got to remember safety for our employees and for our residents, because as Kevin said, it is being brought in by employees, and you cannot control that. We're not bad people. Senior housing are not bad places. It just so happens that people congregate there. But I think we've learned a lot over these last several months. And I think now, hopefully, we get a cure, and or not a cure, but a vaccine. I think it's going to change, but I think senior housing is still something that is a good investment, and I don't think that it's going away. So it's just going to be different, as we all said. So thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Suzanne.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Great
safe out
panel,
there.
Suzanne. Awesome. Loving it. Hey, who's picking on senior housing? Y'all are adapting. It's going to be great. The COVID's been good for a lot of things, and hopefully it's making everybody better. Okay, so the next panel y'all are getting on. We have 6 minutes before we start. I'm going to just throw a little slide up here as a placeholder, but if you're jumping on, if you're a panelist previously, you can just close out your video and your microphone and stay on and watch that way. So that's fine too. We won't be able to see you, but feel free to stay on. So new panel, I'll let you all kind of jump on here, but we're live. Don't forget that we can see and hear you. So hang in there, and we'll give everybody a little quick 5-minute break, and then we'll go back into it.
Hey, everyone.
Morning, everybody.
Hey, Susie, it's good to see you.
Good to see you too. All right, well, good luck, everyone. I'm sure you'll break a leg, do well.
Oh, I have a meeting at 11. I took my 10 o'clock meeting and moved it to 11 so I can watch.
All right, let's get that second panel started. I'm Todd Phillips, host of Power 30. That's our weekly news show. I'm going today's Sans a tie. I'm in Minnesota, y'all in Chicago. We're getting great weather here, and we're going to send it your way and make sure that you get to enjoy snow and sleet too, not just us. Okay, so if you're on the second panel, unmute yourself, get ready to go. Jim James from Integra Realty Resources is going to be your host and your moderator. I will be here, folks, if you need me, but I'm going to turn my microphone and my camera off. And are you ready, Jim?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, away you go.
Okay, hi, I'm Jim Cutil. I'm a managing director with Integra Realty Resources Chicago. I'm also a member of the National Senior Care Specialty Practice with Integra. I've been working on senior care properties for probably 30 years now. We have a great panel. We have three broad categories to talk about. We have finance, investing, and development we all want to cover, both now, and we want to take a look at the crystal ball and see where we think things are going. So really the first thing is we want to talk about financing projects today, existing, development. So I thought I'd start with Bluma. Bluma, you're a senior lender at CIBC. Oh, by the way, panelists, if you could, let's take a step back. If everybody could do like no more than a 30-second intro of each other, just talk and see who you are and what you do. So Bluma, if you could start off.
Sure. My name is Bluma Broner. I work at CIBC. I've been lending into this industry for a little over 20 years now, and I'm excited to be here. And what I will tell you will be my opinions, not CIBC's. Want to make sure that that's clear, and I look forward.
Okay, Jacob, how about you?
We're having trouble hearing you. Is anyone else having trouble hearing Jacob?
Yes.
Yes.
Try turning your mic on and off again. I don't see any indicators that we shouldn't be able to hear you on my end.
Maybe check his volume.
There you go.
Let me see if, did that work?
We can hear you.
Yeah,
Yes.
there
All
we
right,
go.
there you go, Jacob. Take it away.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm just going to do it from my computer. Having some problems with, I was trying to dial in as well. Apologize for that. Hi, my name is Jacob Gale, and I am one of the owners and founders of a senior housing advisory firm called Blueprint Advisors, based in Chicago. And been doing senior housing M&A for about 20 years. And I think I speak for many people at my firm, Blueprint, when I say that we are big fans of Bluma Bronner.
Thank you, Jacob.
Okay, Rudy, how about you?
Sure. Rudy Trebles. I'm the CEO and founder of Wedgwood Investment Group. We are in the commercial real estate investment banking field, and we focus almost exclusively on the senior housing industry. I've been in commercial finance for over 35 years, and we get involved in raising equity and mezzanine, construction loans, acquisition loans, bridge loans, permanent financing, and we're also very entrepreneurial. We're partners in a half a dozen communities and have a couple more that are getting ready to come out of the ground in 2021.
Okay, and Jerry, last but not least.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jerry Finnis, the CEO and one of the founders of Pathway to Living, based out of Chicago. We have been developing, owning, and operating senior housing all up and down the spectrum since 1996. So it's been a long time and seen a lot of ups and downs in the market, and it's an interesting time we're in. Currently, our portfolios consists of right around 2,900 units mostly in the Midwest, but we recently expanded into the Florida market. So,
okay. So as far as finance goes, Bluma, let's start off again. Talk about, first of all, the appetite for senior care financing. I know you've got an existing portfolio at CIBC. If someone comes in that's outside of CIBC, appetite for that, property type, how do you look at a deal today in COVID?
So, okay, there's a lot of questions there, so I'll try to get to them all.
Yes.
So first of all, I think one of the great things about CIBC is we've always been a consistent force in this market. And I think one of the reasons is we really delve in and we try to understand everything that's going on in the business. It allows us to go with the ups and downs of this cyclical industry. So we are always looking to expand and we're always looking for new clients. I think one of the also unique things about CIBC is we don't have a box. Every deal is unique and every deal has different characteristics. And so we are going to try to really understand that deal and to see if we can find a way to make it work. Our deals are made up, mainly we have SNF, but we also have IL, AL, memory care. We also finance a whole number of ancillary services that we finance. In terms of location, there's not any hard and fast rule that we have. However, location definitely plays a role in how we're looking at it. Is it rural? Is it urban? You know, do you have access to employees? All these other things that come around into the whole idea of that deal. Clinical care, care history. So we are really delving into each deal. During COVID, we have continued to close. I mean, we have closed well over $500 million of deals since COVID started. So now, many of those, let's be very honest, were negotiated pre-COVID, but I will tell you, we are sending out term sheets. You know, on a weekly basis, we are still sending out term sheets and growing this business. We are careful and we are delving and asking a lot of questions. You know, I would tell you when this started, many of our clients would send us projections that had the COVID expenses going away. Well, what we've seen as we're into this is COVID expenses are not going away and not nearly to the degree anybody thought they were going away. So even if hero pay has managed to come down a little bit, you know, or pay has come down a bit, PPE is up, testing is up. You know, there are still a lot of expenses and you have employees that are, whether they have to go into quarantine, you know, somebody in their family was exposed. So you're using a lot more agency than you were ever using before, or having to pay people to come in or to do extra shifts or overtime. So I don't see expenses going down at anywhere near the rate that people thought they were going to go down. So that needs to be taken into account and really need to be delved into and to, you know, and ask those questions and get the answers.
Rudy, as far as raising finance on the equity side or on the debt side, how today versus say 12 months ago? Have desired rates of return changed, or are requirements of the debt holders? How, I guess what I'm saying is, where is the market right now?
Sure. So I was thinking about this question, and I kind of reaching back to the NIC conference in February and the more recent one. And believe it or not, actually our demand, and now we're trying to help people find alternative sources of capital or someone different than their normal bank. So in this type of marketplace, when banks have been getting tighter or put on pause for a while, I think people reach out to intermediaries more to help them find their debt or their equity. So from our standpoint, our business has actually been quite well. We had 50 meetings at the conference in February. We had 50 meetings at the conference in October, and actually that portal is open to continue to have meetings between now and the end of the year on NIC. So we hope to have another 30 to 40 meetings between now and the end of the year. So I think from that standpoint, the demand is definitely there. I think that banks were kind of on pause, or they were only dealing with their current customers. But I saw that kind of go away. At least, if there were 100 lenders back in February, that probably went down to 20 or 30 lenders that were still in the market. The rest of them had taken a pause. I've seen 50 of those probably come back and say, we're in the market again, not only for our customers, but also for other new business. So that's a good sign. The demographics are coming. We are needs-based. So, that's still coming. And by the time, a lot of what we do is in the development side and financing for development, whether it's equity or debt. These projects aren't going to be built for another 12 to 18 months and starting to fill them up at that point. So at that point, I think most people have said the vaccine's going to be here. Things are going to be in much better shape. The nice thing about new buildings, though, would be that you're sitting there with a product that is more current to help with pandemic-proof things that you might do. Anything from the HVAC they were talking about in the last panel to other designs, maybe more cottages, the separate entrances. All those things will help for the pandemic. So overall, I think we're in good shape.
So it sounds like your people are considering that COVID is going to be a finite period of time. And for at least for a development deal, they're looking ahead of that to see where they're going to be and possibly completion after the worst of COVID is passed?
Yes, but I think they're also thinking we have to think ahead and what the next pandemic could possibly be, and anything from isolation rooms to, back to that filtering for HVAC systems, all the things that can be done, and thinking outside of the box, since we've kind of had this brush with a pandemic, that there could be something even greater in the future. They just have to be thinking ahead as well in the construction design and the quality of the building you build.
Okay. Jacob, you have a deal under contract. How do you get it financed today? Is there a process that has changed over time? Or if once you get a project under contract, lead us through. How do you get it financed today?
I think it depends a lot on, we're seeing a sort of a large bifurcation. Deals that have existing in place cash flow and existing debt coverage out of the chute, I think we're seeing it's a lot easier to get financed. Where we're struggling with on the financing side specifically are unstabilized assets. Potentially they've been hit hard with COVID. To Bloom's point, that COVID-related expenses have gone way up. It's unclear if they're going to be able to go away. I think for maybe the early innings of the COVID pandemic, we were able to get some of that stuff added back. But I think, as Bloom correctly pointed out, that battle is getting increasingly harder to win. And those are going to have significant impairments to EBITDA. What we're seeing at a really kind of high level is there's still a lot of equity. And actually, a lot of the operators that we work with received a lot of funding from PPP. There's still a fair amount of CARES Act funds sloshing around.
the private equity folks are as flush as they've ever been with new funds. Many of them were minted right pre-COVID. So it's a little bit of a tale of two cities, with the equity being very plentiful and on the debt being very, very, not very scarce, but still very much impaired. We found the larger lenders have taken sort of a bigger step back. We've seen the regional banks kind of stepping in, what we call like the non-money center banks have been stepping in, picking up some of the slack, although the pricing is just not necessarily as favorable. I think the senior housing industry took a little bit of a hit when Fannie and Freddie sort of tightened up some of their underwriting guidelines. And so much of the bridge financing that we typically find is underwritten to a Fannie exit. I know that they have backed off some of their requirements, but when COVID really hit, you saw Fannie require all sorts of new escrows and lowering LTVs. And our sense was that the money center banks, the large lenders, the sort of the capital ones of the world, if you will, reacted by sort of pulling back. I think it's been difficult for the lending community to underwrite the COVID risk, and I think they've reacted to being a little bit of a flight to quality for some of our best buyers and some of our blue chip, some of the biggest folks on the equity side. Even those guys have really struggled to find financing. You've seen a lot of recourse start to come in from folks that normally would not even entertain recourse, and some of the buyers have begrudgingly accepted it. We're doing more and more seller financing, sort of creative deal structures, assuming existing loans. So it has been a challenge to get some of that stuff financed, and not one sort of magic bullet. I'd say just sort of anything and everything that people can do to get creative to get these things.
Jerry, you've identified a site, you've got a development opportunity. Lead us through, how do you get a development finance today, and how different is that now versus say a year ago?
Well, I mean, I think first off, you really have to, when we think we have something that we want to do, we really have to be able to convince ourselves and other capital sources that that you really have a very compelling argument for what you want to do today. I mean, you remember we're only 9 months into this thing, and we're just hearing the vaccines maybe are on the corner. We don't know that yet. We don't know how it's going to really affect the market for a while. So we have to, and there was overbuilding before this, so in a lot of markets. So we really have to have a compelling argument. If you do have that, then there seems to be private equity out there for new developments today. As it's gonna take a while. I think as a developer, you have to be willing to, take a lot more of the risk along the way, and a lot more of the risk of the pre-development capital to get through this time frame over the next 12 to 18 months. I think some of the PE funds might be less willing to come in earlier. And then, as Jacob was saying and Rudy was saying, the regional banks are going to be a lot of the debt providers on new developments for a while. But you might not be really getting ready to take down that capital for 12 to 18 months. Everything is going to be slower and harder today, and it's just what it is. But it's doable. But you have to really, I think the most important thing is you have to really be able to convince yourself that this is a project that you can do today, and that it will stand out and be markedly different when you come out of the ground and when you open up your doors in 24 to 36 months.
Okay. To one of Bluma's comments about operating expenses, I can tell you from a valuation perspective, when we have an existing facility we're going to value, I really want 3 years operating history before COVID. I really want to see a history of what the operation was, both on the income side, census side, but most importantly, the expenses. And then I want as much as I can get for 2020. And that's what we have the discussion then with the operator of, tell me what's happened, tell me what the impact has been, and what's your perspectives on going forward, so we can get as much of the story as we can. Because you're right, Bluma, we're not just going to say that we're back to an 82% expense ratio on a nursing home after 6 months. That's not going to happen. So trying to judge where this goes is the toughest one. But the best we can do is get as good a history as we can, and get every opinion of everyone in the deal that we possibly can, and then ultimately we're going to have to make a decision. So it's not an exact science by any means. So that's a basic discussion on financing, but the second half of what we were, or the second third of what we were going to talk about is more on investing. Jacob, you were doing some discussions on brokerage, but I'm curious, how active is the market right now? Is there as much demand to buy as there was, say, last year at this time? And we'll see if you're there. Jacob, can you hear me?
Yeah, I just had to come on and come off. I'm sorry, I lost my.
Okay. What we're talking about here is
I've got two kids doing e-learning streaming.
What we're talking about is the activity of investors today. How active are people looking to buy now, say 12 months ago? Are you as active? Is there a difference in the type of people that want to buy right now?
I think people very much want to continue to be active. I think guys, folks want to grow their businesses. Private equity firms are under a lot of pressure to deploy capital. There's a time limit to how long they typically have to put it out. There's unprecedented amounts of capital that's been raised. Operating companies want to grow. They want to grow their management companies. People want to continue to make money. It's just much more difficult. It's very hard to get third parties through buildings. It's difficult to get financing, which I touched on. It's difficult to do physical site visits, and I think that stuff is impairing transactional velocity. I wouldn't necessarily say that pricing is really down all that much. It is a little bit, but I think things are just a little more clumsy. Things are taking longer, and then we're seeing on the transactional side, buyers counsel is typically including COVID-related contingencies into the purchase agreements, which the sellers are begrudgingly accepting, and that has. We've seen a lot of those hit very far along deals. We've seen deals. We've had multiple deals die this year. Very close to the finish line because of a COVID outbreak, typically brought in by an employee, and everything goes pencils down. So even hard money on due diligence is not really hard if there's a COVID outbreak.
Okay, Rudy, probably similar question to you. Volume of what you're looking at now. I think you touched on that earlier, but I am interested to hear, are the same kind of people out there wanting to do deals right now? Have you had new people come in and just the volume of what you're seeing in the market right now?
I would say, volume is definitely there. There's more opportunity, I think, for the value add investor, and there's going to continue to be a lot more opportunity for the value add investor. There are lenders out there that are more than willing to do kind of a bridge to a HUD or a bridge on that type of opportunity. I think new development is there. It is a little bit slower than it was from a standpoint of the time that it takes to get something done, as Jerry mentioned. But if you have a good opportunity, I think there's money available out there to invest in new development as well as value add. At the end of this, I think everyone's going to have businesses that are going to be run better than they were, pre-COVID. Post-COVID is going to, what's the line that if it doesn't kill you, you'll be a better person. And you'll have a better business. So I think the key here is for everybody to concentrate on really all the things you need to do to be conservative and run your business the right way. And that's the nice thing about this industry. Most people that are the good people that are in it, all the ones that I've come across, are in it for the right reason to help seniors.
As far as for everybody on the panel, I know that there are differences in regions that investors are interested in. It's following demographics. I get that. Has COVID changed where people look, both in regions of the country or urban, rural. Has COVID changed any of that at all? Anybody have an opinion on that?
I can start with that. I think, at least coming from Chicago, major metropolitan area, the city, the urban locale has really been decimated for most housing types recently. Lots of folks been moving out, at least temporarily, and businesses shut down. Typical urban problem we have today, at least especially in the downtown areas, which is where the hottest market. So I think that's a little bit on pause for a while. I think everybody believes those urban markets will come back, but I think the offset to that is more urban, suburban, like infill, near closer ring to the city marketplaces. I think, but again, if you're thinking of investing in new development, we really have to figure out that compelling argument, because there was some overbuilding going on before, and that didn't necessarily go away, just got exacerbated because of this. I mean, if you look at all the big REITs and what they've been posting, their average occupancies are way down, and Nick's coming out how way down is. It's going to take a while for all that to sort of clear the system and get back to where you have some stability in the marketplace. But I think that's why you got to really be careful and pick your spots.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody would love to be in that high demographic area. You want to be in Naperville, Downers Grove, Elmhurst, Barrington, whatever. Those have already been picked over. And so you're right. It's hard to find opportunities right now. Rudy, are there any areas that people are looking at that you've been seeing?
Well, Florida, it seems like every other day we're seeing a new opportunity down in Florida. So I don't think that people are slowing down in Florida. There's probably going to be some, or there are some areas that might be a little overbuilt right now, but it seems like they're figuring many more people are going to be moving to Florida. And so a lot of opportunities down there. That's really the one area that kind of jumps out at me. Chicago is probably not necessarily the best of areas right now. A little overbuilt in places, and then I don't know if everyone saw the NIC market fundamentals that came out yesterday for the third quarter. But let's see, the occupancy averaged 82.1 during the third quarter, down 265 basis points. Occupancy for independent living was 84.9, and for assisted living 79 during the third quarter. Occupancy rates for independent living decreased 241 basis points from the prior quarter. Assisted living occupancy rates decreased 291 basis points. So, occupancy is down.
Yeah, and with the current surge in COVID, I could see this continuing, where you're not going to get the volume of referrals of people. There's only so much you can postpone moving someone to assisted living, but there is some of that, I'm sure, going on right now. To circle back, Bluma, I do work for you guys, certainly in the Midwest, but how active are you in other regions of the country versus, say, pre-COVID? Is there a difference to that, or is it just the way the market's going?
So we I think are today in 39 states, maybe we're even more now. So we are definitely nationwide. And I would tell you, no, we don't have a specific area that we say we will not lend to that area. We'll go if the deal makes sense and the sponsor makes sense, and it all underwrites the way we want. We won't. We'll look at almost every state. Massachusetts and Connecticut, as everybody knows, those are going to be harder states no matter how good the deal is.
Okay. We've kind of touched on development already. Jerry, I was going to bring you in and talk about how you get a development going. You've kind of touched on some of that. Are there areas you guys are looking at right now, the areas that you think you still see an opportunity? Obviously, you don't want to give away trade secrets, but if you can talk to us about it, it'd be great.
Well, if you look at, I think the great question that everybody has is how to deal with this perceived middle market.
Yes.
We know what the real low end is, we know what the real high end is, and you got this big vast middle market, and it's been defined multiple different ways by multiple different people, so it's a little bit unclear. I think if you can again, I think there has to be a compelling reason, and in this case, it could be a compelling reason from the product that you're offering the potential residents. So you have to really think about that in terms of what you're doing. I think to build something that everybody built for the last 5 years and just another one in another corner in a suburb somewhere is probably not a good idea.
Mhm.
I think you need to you need to really think through strategically, and as Rudy was saying, that can vary dramatically by marketplace. You know, and the other thing I'll say, you know, we all are in the industry relatively banking on, you know, the growth in seniors at 75 plus over the next 5 and 10 years. We're starting to see when we start to do some demographic analysis is that it is going to grow, but it'll grow differently in different parts of the country. It'll grow differently in terms of the incomes of those folks. If a lot of the higher income folks from the Midwest are moving down to Florida, you know, we're left with a little bit lower income here. We don't know how that's going to play itself out, but that's, you know, things to consider. So it's not one big pot of seniors sitting there ready to move into all of our senior housing communities.
I think your comment about the middle market is an interesting one. I think everybody in the country is struggling with that. Of how do you close the gap between the rate that the middle market can afford and the cost of building? Is there anything that you can cut back? Is there, you know, are there any ideas as to how to get the cost in line with the rate structure?
Well, it seems to be that what we're seeing people do, and we've been experimenting with, is more a la carte type services, so people can choose some things that they don't want to pay for. And that helps drive the price point down and make it maybe expand the market sort of at the bottom end of your scale, make it a little more affordable for somebody to move in to get started. That's harder in assisted living memory care. It's easier in an independent living, you know, on back to the 55 plus housing. You know, but the real, you know, it's hard to do in assisted memory care. I mean, we already know those folks are coming in frailer and older than they have, you know, 10 years ago, and nothing what was going on with COVID is causing that to slow down. So by definition, you know, services are services, and, you know, you have to, you know, it's really hard to cut that back. So that, in my mind, it's harder to deal with middle market in that environment. But the only thing that you can move up, you know, deal with the real estate component of it, which is really buying and renovating something that's older that might be able to fit that bill, but because new construction is still very expensive.
Yeah, so the idea of conversion then, I mean, it's always been the thought that a hotel is something that could be converted to an assisted living facility. However, the market, you know, stop me if I'm wrong, but the market no longer accepts a 250 square foot studio unit as market standard.
Right.
Is that the way to try and plug the gap, though, for a middle market assisted living? Well, is it the compromise that the public may have to make?
Well, at the time the marketplace gets very highly occupied, and that's the only alternative, a middle market senior might accept a 250 square foot hotel room as a place to live. Until there's no other alternatives, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon.
Has anybody else on the panel, has anybody come to you trying to solve that middle market? Are there ideas as to how to have that gap close?
I've seen a lot of expansion in the Medicaid waiver assisted living programs all over the United States, where people are investing more heavily in that area. And at least
so the idea is a Medicaid waiver expanding more into like the middle market because no one can afford senior care otherwise?
That's what I'm saying, yes. I think you see the savings rate that's going on in America. I just think as you look down the road, I don't see that you're going to have the masses that are going to be able to afford these $5,000 a month, you know, units.
So in effect, the Illinois supportive living facility type of thing will become
Yes.
a for more and more areas.
That's what I think.
Okay.
And group homes. You're gonna see more group homes, home health. You know, that sort of on the fringe. The group home thing is a little awkward because it's somewhat unlicensed. Like in Texas, they run as essentially as adult foster homes, which is sort of a way of kind of getting around some of the assisted staffing requirements and some of the licensure stuff. I think you're going to see more and more of that, to Bluma's point, that it's just really
I think we've run into this in Wisconsin, where they have the community-based residential facilities, which is a public aid thing more than anything, but it's a way to house people that is a little more inexpensive way to do it, I guess. I think that's going to be a real challenge going forward. Again, if anybody else has any other ideas on that, I'd love to hear it.
I've got a couple thoughts here on the that middle market. I think it, you know, if you can make this happen, a combination of the following could all help. One, you got to buy the land right. You really have to find that piece of land that is going to be a low cost per unit. Then you have to find a way to have lower cost construction. See if you can get tax credits, any type of TIF financing that might be out there to help the case. And then, you know, if you can do all that and put it in an opportunity zone, I think you know those combinations, along with the Medicare waiver that Bluma was talking about, I think that's a lot of things to put together. But if you can put all that together, you can probably do it at a you know reasonable cost.
Yeah, all this reminds me of people that do low-income housing, tax credit housing, with the layer on top of layer on top of layer, trying to close the gap.
Right.
It sounds like there's going to have to be some sort of public sector help in order to close that cost gap versus the rate that those people can afford. This is pretty much what we wanted to cover for where we are right now, unless anybody wants to chirp in with anything that we missed.
I had a quick question for Jerry. Jerry, I'm curious as an operator to get your thoughts on this. I think as we're seeing some of those unprecedented occupancy declines that we were just touched on in the senior care investor, I feel there's an increasing concern that the fallout from that is going to be potentially rate wars and some substantial concessions. And I'm just curious, as the operator here, how worried about that are you? Do you see that really becoming a big factor in 2021?
You know, depending on where you are in the country, we see that a lot in the Chicago metropolitan area. Depending on the market you're in and the location you're in, we're seeing that as some new products coming in and just finding a way to, you know, put somebody in the apartment for a period of time to get through this. It's sort of very defensively to get through it. So, you know, discipline is really good to have, except when you're getting pressure from, you know, lenders and investors and things like that. You know, people will put some folks in because we're at a high fixed cost business. You know, our operating cost is high fixed cost relative to other kind of product types. So, I think it's going to be a while. I think that's the risk that we all run in the industry for a period of time. I could be totally wrong with that. I think we're just going to start to see some of the financial fallout that's going to put more pressure on folks. You know, a lot of cans are kicked down the road over the last several months, and at some point that stops, and now there's pressure to put somebody in an apartment. And I think that's going to be a challenge for a while. But you know, it'll take a bit of time to work its way through that. And I think you know, if we get through first half of next year, things will start to, you know, work a little more positively than they might in the first quarter, for example.
Jerry, as far as occupancy goes, as far as projections for your facilities, is this another 12 to 18 month window, or do you see recovery shorter than that?
Well, you know, a big question I have is, you know, if all these occupancies are down 10 points across the country, something along those lines, especially in the high acuity assisted living memory care business, you know, those folks are already staying a shorter length of stay and those other kind of things. So you really do have to bring in have a good amount of inflow to maintain to keep your occupancy growing. And that's going to be a challenge for a period of time, and it's going to again. I think once there's a little more confidence in the marketplace, and that'll just take a period of time, and with vaccines and the like, I think then we'll get back to normal. But right now, right now, folks that are coming in, sort of have to be somewhere, and that's a very need-driven business, as I think somebody said. Jim, you might have said it very early on, and I think that's what we're seeing, and it's going to take a little while before that changes.
I think that's the optimist idea here is it's a need-based housing. You can only put it off for so long. So when there's more confidence in the well-being of the resident, do you expect there to be a spike in move-ins at some time next year?
I don't know that I would expect a spike. I think spikes have a tendency to work sort of reverse spikes, that bad things happen quickly, things go down fast, but they always seem to come back slower.
Mm-hmm.
In anything. And I think I think we're going to see the same thing here. Everybody will feel confident, more confident at their own rate. It's interesting. We were when all this started to happen, as the operator, you're always very concerned about it. Are people afraid to move mom in because she's in a place where she can really get sick easily? Now the bigger issue is, boy, if I move in mom today, what if I don't, COVID's going up, what am I going to be able to see her over the next 3-4 months?
Mm-hmm.
So those are the the way of thinking about it that is causing demand to stay slow, and slower, not totally slow, but slower than we had, let's say, pre-COVID. But I do believe that, as some of these solutions, COVID, more therapeutics and things like that are out there, everybody's going to gain more confidence down the road. You got to remember, we're really not that much, except for the announcement yesterday about the vaccine, we're not that much of a different spot than we were in May. People are still, our biggest defense has been masks and social distancing and things like that. Now we're maybe have some other ones which are coming down the pike a little sooner than we thought, which is great. But it will take a while for that confidence to come back.
In a similar vein, we had talked earlier about operating costs and how they've spiked because of COVID. Is there any thought, anybody can chirp in on this, but is there any thought of, if we do get a vaccine, if we do get a little bit more normalcy 12 to 18 months out, are we going to see a slow regression back to what expense rates were? Or because of the increased cost of staff, is that always going to be there? Bluma, I think you had touched on that. Are you guys underwriting with a recovery in expenses, or are you seeing this is going to be a long-term thing?
I think it depends which expense you're talking about and how much. So I think, you may see some recovery in PPE expenses. Testing should hopefully, if there's a vaccine, that kind of expense hopefully will fade away. Okay. I think employee expenses are going to go up, have gone up. I think they'll stay a little elevated to what they were in the past, but I don't think as high as, when you see 50 or 100% increases in those. I don't think you're going to see that. Even now with the elections, as the increases in minimum wage, and you're reading about it all the time, and increasing, the CNA's pays to that minimum of $15 an hour. I think you are going to see increases in employee expenses, and I think that's here to stay.
Yeah, I had one operator for a nursing home say, if there's a change of 50 cents an hour for his competitor down the road, he's got to match it, because otherwise he's trying to find all new staff.
Right.
The staff is mobile, not only on wages, but also on their perceived safety by facility to facility.
And replacing the staff is much more expensive. Just the training that goes involved, getting everybody used to everybody else, just getting the residents used to the new staff. It's so important to have that stability. And so I hope this industry can find a way to make sure that we have less turnover rates and that people can make the livable wage and still turn a profit.
Okay. Jacob, I think you had a hand up.
I did. I had a follow-up question for Bluma. One thing that we've spent a bunch of time as an organization talking about and thinking about is loan defaults. I'm just curious, Bluma, where do you guys think, what does 2021 look like? It feels like a lot of folks got a lot of PPP money and a lot of CARES Act money that's helped to smooth over some of the turbulence, and there's also been a fair amount of restructurings and that kind of stuff. I'm just curious. Talk to us about what you see 2021 look like, not just for your bank, but just kind of at a high level. Do you see a lot of loan defaults, foreclosures?
Really, no. So CARES Act and PPP has really buoyed this industry.
For sure.
and is absolutely keeping it afloat and really well. And the question is, how long will that money last?
I agree.
And will there be more? And even more importantly, will they be allowed to keep it? The rules keep changing and nobody has come out yet, and we don't have any clarity on what they're going to have to show as expenses in order to justify the money that they received. So that is a whole bunch of uncertainty in this market right now. We thank God, I would tell you almost no restructurings. We have, no defaults because that money is there. As we look towards the future, if people can't start getting occupancy back to levels up where they have, and expenses don't sort of level out, I do foresee a problem. Capital can cure all. So, people, and that's one of the things that as we look at is, do you have access to capital? When times are going to get tough, is there a place to go? Or do the owners, are they willing to put their hands in their pocket and be able to keep things afloat? So I'm hopeful that they won't need to, but I guess, time will tell. But I think, with the vaccine that they're talking about, it's like really right around the corner. I'm actually more hopeful that we should be okay.
One of the last things that we had talked about in getting ready for this, actually, Rudy, you brought this up. It was like changes going forward. What do we see? Changes in cap rates, investor desired returns. Have you been hearing anything from the people you're working with as to how they see things going forward?
There's a recent survey that I received from Senior Housing Investment, and it said that 50% of the people who took the survey thought that cap rates would go up 50 to 100 basis points. The other 50% thought they would be flat. I personally feel like cap rates are going to be anywhere from flat to maybe up a quarter to a half. But that's kind of it on the cap rate side. Demand wise, we used to have a hard time financing projects that had cottages, and we've seen more and more of them, and we've seen lenders actually go from not liking them because of the efficiency to liking them because of the pandemic. So that seems to be something that has been catching on, as long as you have enough land that you can build enough, cottages. In general, I'd see demand for AL and memory care, being consistent, down a little bit right now, but, gradually coming back, as Jerry mentioned. And then IRRs, I think on the acquisition side, they're kind of, if you're, a very, very substantial company, they're going to be in the 13 to 15% range for stabilized acquisition, 16 to 21 for value add or more, and on new construction in a 19 to 25%, unless you're a top tier operator developer, then your cost of capital is going to be more in that 13 to 16 range. And that's pretty much the same as they were pre-COVID. Debt is more on the recourse side. I think you're getting down to closer to 50%, where it used to be 65% non-recourse. A few people maybe can get 60% non-recourse debt. We do have a new bond program that is a 75% non-recourse program. The rate's a little bit higher. It's up at 7.5%, but we're kind of using that bond program as really a construction and mini perm loan, which seems to be working, and they figure the cost of capital is just a little more. You just got to make the numbers still work with that, but that's kind of an overview.
One of the things we haven't talked about on this panel is HUD financing. I'm curious if anybody here, if Jacob, if any of your deals have gone HUD finance, or is it a conventional close and then refi into HUD? If anybody has experience with dealing with HUD recently as to how it's changed.
You don't see a lot of necessarily direct to HUD deals. Typically, there's a bridge piece there. Oftentimes, something HUD's box is pretty specific, so we're seeing, you know, the lion's share of all of our HUD deals usually.
Okay, I think Bluma, historically, CIBC has been a bridge to HUD type lender as well. Is that still true?
So we underwrite as though the loan will be with us forever. So we are underwriting so that if HUD goes away, we're here. So we're okay to hold the loan, but we do a lot of bridges.
Is it still active? Are people still thinking that when they come to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I will tell you, we had a bunch of loans that were supposed to be taken out and things are getting pushed off for one reason or another. I don't think the HUD market is gone. I think it's still there. It's just they're also, you know, tightening up their underwriting, looking at things more and checking things out.
Okay. Actually, Rudy, you threw one question at me it's kind of an overarching thing of senior housing actually recession proof or not? And it's an interesting question. I think COVID is not a recession question, it's something completely different, but is senior housing the type and be it on the range of the census mix, but is housing really something that to a certain extent is recession proof? And I could argue both sides of that. So I'm curious as to your idea, because you're the one who threw it at me.
Sure. Well, you know, I could probably argue either side as well. But it seems like we are needs-based. The demographics are still coming. So in the short term here, and call pandemic, whatever you want to call it, you know, obviously part of that leads into some kind of recession. So from that standpoint, it maybe help cause, or the only cause for the recession. Otherwise, I think things would be going along great. So I think that it's a opportunity for us to just look at the businesses and really put together your thoughts, gather as much information as you can, and just be conservative in your projections.
Okay. Todd, were any questions coming? I'm sorry, go ahead, Bluma.
I want to ask a question maybe for Rudy and Jerry. As people now working from home is becoming a norm, and people are going to see, like, even after this is all over, I can work from home. Do you think that people will say, you know what, I can keep mom at home because I can work from anywhere, and so I can maybe watch over her or dad and maybe delay that move in?
You know, it's interesting. I think the higher acuity assisted memory care, it's becoming more difficult to do for somebody, especially on the memory care side, to work at home if you have a loved one that has dementia. I think independent living, that might play itself out a little bit more. You know, you can always put that off for a period of time, and I think that's definitely an option. I don't know. I don't think we've really seen the impact of that. Again, it's been such a short period of time. But I think services and things that are more optional should be affected by folks being able to stay home. And if the recession gets worse, for example, you know, people are going to be even more focused on how to save money. So that's something to really think about.
Todd, were there any questions coming in that you want us to address?
You know, I was falling asleep at the wheel. So have you addressed the thinking out of the box hotel units can be combined to become 1-bedroom units?
It's possible too. It's all based on cost. Jerry, I don't know if you've looked at conversion ideas on hotels.
Well, over the years, it's amazing how many of those kind of conversion opportunities are presented to you. And for the most part, they never made sense, because they would tell you it's 100,000, 200,000 per key. And I go, but I don't want all those keys. So, and having said all that, when something is basically vacant, I guess the concept of per key cost maybe just goes away. So I think it's a possibility. But there's always problems in those things. Most of the times the hallways are too narrow and too long, and all kinds of things that you wouldn't do if you're designing from scratch. But I mean, I think there may be more opportunities for folks to look at, generally speaking, in pretty good infill type locations, but not always in residential locations. So we'll see. I mean, I think it's more possible now than it was 5 years ago, but we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, my concern is always when you get your basic 60 or 80 room budget hotel and it's gotten at its lifespan, can it be senior housing? Is it really going to pass the building code for that town?
Right. I think you mentioned earlier, smaller communities, CBRF communities in Wisconsin. Those are high acuity, mostly built very high physical plant standards because they're sort of mini nursing homes. And you're right, those would be very difficult to work in a hotel. What we also find is always tough in hotels are the bathrooms. They're always too small, don't have big enough doors, especially depending on the vintage of those. So they're not easy to make work. And obviously the bathroom is a horribly important thing in a senior housing community.
Yeah, my feeling on this is when you're buying a hotel to convert, you're buying a box and then you're going to have to rebuild your within the box.
Right.
Okay.
It's got to be tough to make the numbers work if you're buying an empty box because walls are important and expensive.
Yeah, very tough.
Well, hey, thank you, everyone. 10:53. I see. If there's any more questions, get them in super quick before I let these folks go. 3, 2, 1, counting down. Well, thank you, everyone. This is going to be available on YouTube as soon as I get around to getting Fridays up. I'll get this one up. But that's where you'll also find our weekly news show and all kinds of good stuff. So panels and information galore. Look for REjournals YouTube channel. Hopefully we can put it on our website and stuff too. All I'm seeing is thank yous in the chat box. So any final words and I'll let you all go.
Thanks very much, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
And to my panel, thank you very much for spending the time.
Yeah, great info. Agreed.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.